Why should I feel discouraged? Why should the shadows come? Why should my heart feel lonely and long for heaven and home? When Jesus is my portion, a constant friend is he. His eye is on the sparrow, and I know he watches over me. I sing because I'm happy. I sing because I'm free. His eye is on the sparrow, and I know he watches me.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see. 'Twas grace that taught my heart to fear, and grace my fears relieved. How precious did grace appear the hour I first believed. Through many dangers, toils and snares, I've already come. 'Tis grace that brought me safe thus far, and grace will lead me home. When we've been 10,000 years, bright as the sun, we've no less days to sing God's praise than when we first begun. Danny boy, the pipes are calling from glen to glen and down the mountainside. The summer's gone and all the roses falling. 'Tis you, must go and I must bide. But come ye back when summer's in the meadow, or when the valley's hushed and white with snow, and I'll be here in sunshine or in shadow. Oh, Danny boy, I love you so. And when you come and all the flowers are dying, and I am dead, as dead I well may be, you'll come and find the place where I am lying, and kneel and say an Ave there for me. And I shall hear, though soft, you tread above me, and all my grave shall softer, sweeter be. For you will bend and tell me that you love me, and I shall sleep in peace until you come to me.
touching heartbeat as we both dissolve. Now hold me, will you take the time to hold me and embrace the chill? Or miss me, take the time to miss me when the earth stands still. 'Cause there's no use running, 'cause the storm's still coming, and you've been running for so many years. So stay with me, held in my arms like branches of a tree. They'll shelter you for many years. So many years. Stay with me.
Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats. The program is about to begin. At this time, please turn off all electronic devices. Please refrain from using flash photography during the program. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your patience this morning. I'm John Highbush, and I have the honor of being the Executive Director of the Ronald Reagan Presidential Foundation and Institute. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. And thanks to the Tiger Squadron for that terrific flyover just a few minutes ago. I hope a number of you were able to see that. Last year, the Reagan Library was closed on Veterans Day, due, of course, to the pandemic, forcing us to host a virtual program for most of those that attended. Our servicemen and women, our veterans and their families deserve to be thanked in person for their sacrifice and courage. So I am beyond thrilled to be standing here today in front of all of you to thank so many for your service to our great nation. If you would, please stand and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance and our national anthem. The Ronald Reagan Marine Corps League Detachment 597 will parade the colors. Parade the colors. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there.
Please be seated. Before we go any further, there are a few special guests I'd like to recognize who have helped to make our Veterans Day ceremony here at the Reagan Library possible, including some who have supported us for many years. And I'd like to begin by thanking today's harpist, Thomas Baker, a veteran who served in the U.S. Coast Guard, the United States Navy, and the United States Air Force. As well as the Royal High School's Wind Ensemble, the Santa Susana Advanced Women's Choir, the Abbey Road A Cappella Group, and their directors, Lisa Pate and Bevan Abbey, for such a great musical program to begin the day. A very special thank you as well to Paul DiNabilo for the Washington Artillery of New Orleans and their great reenactments in our courtyard. The Naval Mobile Construction Battalion for showcasing their military vehicles just outside. Of course, former Congressman Elton Gallegly and his wife Janice. Elton. Janice. Simi Valley Mayor Keith Mashburn. Keith. And of course, a very special thank you to all of the veterans in our audience today. We thank you for your honor, your bravery, your dedication to our country and its freedom. We salute every one of you. As some of you may already know, I am retiring at the end of this year. And in my 12 years here, I have had the honor of introducing on this very stage former presidents of the United States, heads of state, famous politicians, best-selling authors, musicians, Fortune 500 CEOs. But truth be told, there has never been a greater privilege for me at the Reagan Foundation as its executive director than to play the small part that I have in our Veterans Day program at the library each year. And that is because it's many of you here, the men and women of our armed forces and our veterans who have fought and sacrificed to ensure that America is and will remain the exceptional place that it is. Just last month, I was honored to take part in a tribute to Lee Greenwood. If you are a veteran and you have a pulse, then you know of Lee's popular song, God Bless the USA. And you also know the lyrics of Lee's patriotic tune are powerful and so fitting for this moment today. The song was released in 1984. Lee performed it for the first time at the Republican National Convention with President Reagan and Mrs. Reagan in the audience. 3 months later, Ronald Reagan was reelected in a landslide, winning 49 of 50 states. After the election, during a White House ceremony with the governors of this nation in February of '85, Lee performed for the Reagans once again. President Reagan told those that were gathered at the time that people often speculated how his 1984 campaign was so successful. The president gestured toward Lee. It's because of him. No doubt the president was complimenting Lee, but what he was also admiring were the words of his song. They're quite simple and direct. I'm proud to be an American where at least I know I'm free. And I won't forget the men who died who gave that right to me. And I'll gladly stand up next to you and defend her still today, because there ain't no doubt I love this land. God bless the USA. In honor of our men and women, those who are currently fighting, those who are missing, those who have perished, and the veterans that are here today, may I please ask for a moment of silence. Thank you. Our keynote speaker today is a true patriot in every sense of the word. He's an American entrepreneur, best known as being the founder of GoDaddy.com and PXG, among many other companies. But that is just a small piece of his story. He is also a Marine Corps veteran who served in Vietnam and is a recipient of the Purple Heart, Combat Action Ribbon, and the Vietnamese Cross of Gallantry. But that's just where his story begins. For after his service to our nation in the Marine Corps, he and his wife, Renee, now give a great deal of their time to our veterans. They are the founders of the Bob and Renee Parsons Foundation, which provides transformational grants to nonprofit organizations, including those who focus on the needs of our wounded veterans and military families. It is beyond an honor to have him here with us today. So ladies and gentlemen, if you would, please join me in welcoming Mr. Bob Parsons.
Thank you, Johnny.
Thank you, John.
Wow. Well, hello, everybody. John asked me when I came here, he goes, have you been to the Reagan Library before? I said, I don't think I've ever been to any library before. But here I am today, and it's a real honor to be speaking to you. How many veterans we have here by? Just a show of hands. All right. That's as it should be. And, you know, I'm so sorry to have to do this, but how many Marines? There you go, just a few. That's all. It's just a few Marines, but that's all it takes. Guys love that, don't you? Yeah, I know. All right, well, today I'd like to talk about the military, my experience, PTSD, coming home, how a veteran's PTSD is different from a civilian's, and the hope that we have on the horizon now, new hope, that this is going to be behind us. So one day, so I'm going to jump right in. I was, when I was a kid, I was a terrible student. I was never really quite did what sister wanted me to do. I think if I was a kid in school today, I'd be pumped full of Ritalin. But then I was mostly a pain in, I was a pain in sister's, I'll tell. There you go. And so every year for me, whether I passed or failed, was a photo finish. One year I didn't pass, but through a fluke, it was fifth grade, but through a fluke, I didn't have to repeat it, so I was able to sail right into the sixth grade with maybe fourth grade skills. And I'm going to tell you, brothers and sisters, nobody can ever take that away from me. In my senior year, me and a buddy, this was in 1968, we both joined the Marine Corps on the buddy plan. And because we joined on the buddy plan, the recruiter convinced us of a few things. And one of them was we didn't have to worry about getting drafted into the Army. And why that was important to us to this day, I still don't know. The second was we wouldn't have to go through boot training until August. Now, August at Paris Island was a special time. My God, was it hot. So anyhow, we went to boot camp in August, and we both became riflemen. And after Paris Island, we went to Camp Lejeune infantry training. Then we went home on boot leave, and then from boot leave, we went to Camp Pendleton. And the Marine Corps knew that we probably didn't stay in shape over those 30 days we were home on boot leave, and they were right. So we went to advanced infantry training at Camp Pendleton, which basically meant we ran up and down mountains to get back in shape. And then we went over to Vietnam. My buddy, he was assigned to the 7th Marines. Me, I joined Delta Company, 1st Battalion, 26 Marines in Quang Nam Province. Now, in Quang Nam Province, it was rice paddies there as far as you could see. And my squad's job was to keep the North Vietnamese Army out of those villages, because they would do a couple things. First, they would terrorize the villagers. And in addition to that, they would confiscate all their rice, and both of those things we didn't want to see happening. So the way we dealt with that is we were on ambush most every night in those rice paddies. When I first got to my squad, they were located on top of a hill, Hill 190, 190 feet above sea level, which is how the military names hills. And I learned very quickly that they were ambushed 3 days earlier. They had 5 casualties, 4 were KIAs, and the new man who was the new Marine who was in charge had been in, and to a man, it was all the senior guys. And the man who was in charge then that became our squad leader, his name was Barry George, and he had been in country 6 weeks. Now, at the time, I found that a little unsettling, but as time went on, I learned that Barry was probably one of the finest Marines I've ever met in my life. And although we didn't know it at the time, the squad was in good hands. So after that meeting, I had a couple hours to myself. I went and sat on a wall, looked out over the valley. And in Vietnam, the colors were strikingly beautiful. And you know, if it wasn't for the bugs, the snakes, the leeches, and the North Vietnamese, it'd be a lovely place to have a war. But as I looked out over the valley, I didn't see any of the colors. And the reason I didn't is because I was too preoccupied thinking about how in the world would I survive this? I mean, I just couldn't see any way possible. You know, I knew that I had no experience there, and the guys in my squad didn't have much more than I did. And to boot, the Marine Corps tour, unlike the Army, Navy, and Air Force, which is 12 months, Marine Corps tour, 13 months, of course. So it seemed pretty daunting. And I remember the dark, lonely feeling that came over me. And then my thoughts shifted. I started thinking about, instead of how was I going to survive, to I would probably, that's where I would meet my fate. I'd probably die there. I didn't see any other way past that. And the moment I truly accepted that, said, yeah, that's what's going to happen, the darkness lifted. I felt the peace that I hadn't felt, well, I don't ever remember feeling that way. And I noticed the colors in the valley for the first time. Man, were they beautiful. And I thought, how nice to be alive seeing them. And then I made myself 2 promises. The first promise is I would do whatever I could to do my job as a United States Marine for both my brothers in the platoon that I was joining, and my parents and family back home. Wanted them to be proud of me. And also, I made it my goal to every day, somehow, if it's possible, be alive for mail call in the morning. And because I accepted the worst that could happen, and I set my goal to not look very far into the future, I was just fine. I could deal with that. And as a matter of fact, I used that lesson many times in my business career to get me through knotty situations. You know, a lot of times you just gotta get through it. And just by getting through it, you know, you're good to go. Well, that happened to me a number of times, but there are other stories. That night, we went on our first ambush, my first ambush, and I got my first grisly taste of combat. A Marine by the name of Ermo Hunt, we made contact with the North Vietnamese that night. They were everywhere. And a North Vietnamese hand grenade landed by his feet. He moved back. It didn't go off. It didn't go off. It didn't go off. So he reached down to pick it up, throw it back, went off here. And you can just use your imagination to, you know, how that was. That night, I also had my first confirmed kill. I shot a snake. In all fairness to me, it was a big red snake, and it looked like a dangerous snake. When I shot it, we were all spread out in the rice paddy, and the company had put up illumination. The place looked like Yankee Stadium the way it was lit up. And we were sweeping for any North Vietnamese we could find for the body count. And I remember when I fired it, when I shot that snake, it was just swimming towards me. I mean, I watched it and watched it. I said, surely it's going to go left, or surely it's going to go right. This thing was right at my navel. So I put my M16 on automatic, and I mean, I didn't know snake might have been armed. But I shot it, and when I did, all that water from the rice paddy came up into my face, and that is some nasty water. And when I looked around, after I wiped my eyes, I couldn't see anybody. They were all underwater. So my new squad leader gave me my first counseling that night. And it ended with, next time, don't shoot the snake. The next night, our point man, a Marine named Ray Livesey, decided, you walk through a rice paddy. Anybody here walk through a rice paddy? I'm the only lucky one, huh? All right, well, a rice paddy is a nasty thing to walk through because you look at it and you say, that's only about 1.5 feet of water, but it's also 1.5 feet of mud underneath of it. And my goodness, is that thing difficult to walk through. North Vietnamese knew that too. So our man, point man, Ray Livesey, decided to walk on the rice paddy dikes, and we all filed in back of him, and of course, being the point man, he was up ahead of us. That didn't last 10 minutes until Ray hit a tripwire, and the resulting explosion mangled his legs. That night, there was no medevac choppers available for somebody. It was obviously Ray was going to live. So we had to carry Ray back. I helped carry him back about a mile through those rice paddies to the medevac point. And I remember that's one of the toughest things I ever did. But that's what we did. On the way back, you know, when we were right by Hill 190, our command post, and the protocol at night is when you approach the wire of a Marine command post at night, you radio in, you exchange whatever the codes are, you exchange, and then when you get close, you launch a green flare, and there you go. So what happened was the new point man, a Marine named Bryant, when he launched the flare, he banged it off his knee low, and it's still going up. It went right into the hill, and the captain had just built a new beer tent, and Gene's flare burned it down. And other nights, the only combat we saw was us fighting to stay awake, scraping the mosquitoes off of us, trying to maybe get a little sleep when it was our turn, and that's the way it went during the time. I did every job I was asked to do. I walked tail end Charlie. Tail end Charlie is the safest position in the squad. You know, when you're walking last, it's also the creepiest, because as you're walking through the dark and you're the last one bringing up the rear, literally, you're always looking over your shoulder for anybody that might sneaking up and back of you for whatever reason. I carried a radio. The radio then was called a PRC 25. We called it a Prick 25. Weighed 25 pounds. Had was big and bulky, had an 8-foot antenna, and because it was the squad's only form of communication, you see, there were no cell phones back then. We didn't even know what a cell phone was, hadn't been invented yet. Yes, I am that old. And that's like wearing, since it's the only form of communication for the squad, that's like wearing a sign that says, "Please shoot me first." And I also walked on the point team, which is how I got hurt. So after I was there 1 month, we were going through a village at night. I was walking second, we called that A point. And our point man, big high-stepping guy, again, our man Gene, and it was pitch dark, so I mean, he couldn't possibly have known. He stepped over and missed the tripwire. Me, I've always kind of shuffled around, I hit it. And the explosion caused shrapnel in both my legs and my left elbow. I then I was medevaced again. Boys had to carry me to that same medevac point. I was medevaced in a Jeep, and in the Jeep were two guys who drove me however long. I mean, I was fired up with morphine then, so I mean, I didn't really much care. I was strapped to a stretcher in the back of the Jeep, and the boys had country music going, and they had the headlights off, and we drove like bats out of hell till we got to the field hospital. From the field hospital, I was transferred over to the Air Force Hospital in Da Nang, and I remember when I was in combat, because of the promise that I made to myself, I was never really scared. That ended when I got wounded. When I was in the Air Force Hospital, I remember being terrified. It is probably that Air Force Hospital in Da Nang is slightly safer than us being here at the Reagan Library today. All right, and I was laying there scared to death. The nurse came over and injected something in me. I went right to sleep, and I woke up in Japan at Yokosuka Naval Hospital. I was there for a few months, and until I healed up, and I learned something. In the Army, Navy, and Air Force, if you were wounded, you could opt out of combat. In the Marine Corps, it's 3 times, of course. Now, in all fairness to the Marine Corps, with whatever they ask us to do, it's pretty easy to get wounded 3 times. So I got orders back to the bush. And on my way back, I threw a fluke. You ready for this now? Put your seatbelts on. I was assigned to Marine Corps Intelligence. Now, if you consider my academic record, I was exactly the guy they were looking for. I did a number of jobs there. The one I liked the most, I was a courier of classified materials. I would, or documents. I would fly down to Vietnam and go to the various units that belonged to our mother unit, which was 9th Marine Amphibious Brigade, was located on Okinawa, and we had a rifle company, 26 Marines. It was 3 different combat battalions, and then we had an artillery unit, 5th 175 guns, and I would visit them all and exchange documents, and I kind of liked doing that. And other than a rocket attack or two while I was there, I didn't see much of the war after that. I volunteered to go back to the bush to my unit, and I'll explain why later, 3 times. Each time it didn't work out or it was denied. And then, so after that, I rotated home. And when I went home, we all came home. It was a different world than we left behind. The world that we left behind was, everybody was pretty positive about what we were doing. And when we came back, we not only, we didn't receive a hero's welcome. We didn't receive any welcome. Matter of fact, we were met with, you guys know what happened. We were met with protesters carrying signs. Many of us were. And they called us Nazis, war criminals, baby killers, murderers, drug addicts, on and on and on. And many of the Marines that I talked to have since told me, they said, and I will talk more about this also, they said, I would go back and do what we did in a minute. But the hard part for me was coming home, for all of us. And I'll say that, double underline it. We were even told by the Marine Corps that we might not want to wear our uniforms home and might want to leave at midnight so not to draw the attention of the anti-war crowd. We were all over 311. We were combat riflemen. And we said, we'll wear our uniforms, and if we run into them, bring it on. On my way back, I didn't run into any of the anti-war crowd. And when I got home, I worked a year as a laborer in a steel mill. It was pretty hard work, but good, honest work, Bethlehem Steel in Baltimore. And I was a different guy. I was a different guy that left. The Bob Parsons that left was a happy guy, a little aimless, matter of fact, a lot aimless, and but really easygoing, really relaxed, liked being with other people, wanted to spend time with his with anybody. I was very gregarious, loved going to events. But the guy that came home, he was different in a lot of ways. He was different in good ways and bad ways. First, the good ways. When I got back after the steel mill, I went to work at, I applied to the University of Baltimore to go to college. And they had a program for veterans then. I didn't need to take any of the entrance exams. And my high school grades didn't matter, thank goodness. All right? So all I needed was a high school diploma, and I had that. And so when I went, I studied accounting, and lo and behold, I graduated magna cum laude. I also took the CPA exam, and I passed it the first time. I had time to kill one time when I was here in California, and I bought a book at the Stanford campus in 1975, how to program in BASIC, and I learned how to program from that, taught myself that, and used that, what I learned there to write the code to start my first business, Parsons Technology. And as a matter of fact, when people ask me to say, where'd you learn how to program? I should admit this, but I always tell them Stanford. I got a half-used bottle of water here, but you know what? I was in the Marine Corps. All right. And I also started three significant businesses. I started Parsons Technology with $40,000. I sold it 10 years later for $64 million. I started GoDaddy, almost went broke doing it, but that turned out pretty good. And I'm pleased to tell you that our golf equipment company is doing really well, PXG. So there you go. So now, the important thing to note, I'd have never done any of this without the Marine Corps. The Marine Corps made such a difference in my life in many positive ways. The first thing that it did is it taught me responsibility and the importance of honoring it. It also taught me discipline. Not discipline in the form of punishment, although there was plenty of that, but discipline that if you had a job to do or an obligation, you needed to have the backbone to see it through. You didn't have to like doing it. You didn't have to want to do it. It didn't have to feel good doing it. But you had to do it, and you had to do it the best that you could, and what a difference that attitude makes. They taught me that I could accomplish much more than I ever dreamed possible, and they also taught me that I had a right to be proud. That made a big difference in my life. But as I said, all the changes weren't positive. Remember, I told you just a few moments ago about how I was before I left. He's a pretty easygoing guy. The guy that came home was anything but that. The guy that came home was always on edge, had a flash temper, didn't like being around anybody, never quite felt like I belonged or that I even wanted to belong. Probably the hardest thing is the difficulty sometimes in controlling your emotions. Just crying out of the blue. I never got used to that. You know, and then many of my brothers and sisters report they have nightmares, they have night terrors. I mean, and the list of how debilitating PTSD is goes on and on. So I took and buried myself in my work. I had my job. I used to work, to get Parsons Technology off the ground, I used to work 60-hour clips. I would come into work at 8 a.m. in the morning, work through till 8 a.m. Tuesday, 8 a.m. Wednesday, 8 at night Wednesday, and I'd know when to stop when I started hallucinating. I mean, I hear somebody talking to me, I'd be the only one there, you know, and I'd go, hello, Bob. And on and on. So when that would happen, I would go home. I would like crash for 8 hours. I would then go to the high school track when I got up for a little run, come back, shower, and do it again. And had I not done that, Parsons Technology wouldn't get it wouldn't have got off the ground. And if it wasn't for the Marine Corps, I'd have never had the backbone to do it. But I did it because I loved it. My life was much more difficult than it should have been, most certainly. And when we came back, we never even knew what PTSD was. And I didn't think even later when I learned, I thought I was only in combat a month. I shouldn't have it. But later when I found out what it was, I'm here to tell you, 1 month was more than enough. 1 day gets it done, sometimes 1 hour. It is something that was hard to deal with for me. And to boot, a lot of the human brain, I've since learned, when I've learned what PTSD is and studied it and talked to many doctors, wonderful, wonderful doctors, that the human brain is very adept of hiding imperfections like PTSD from the person whose brain it is. So you'd have guys who were, really, easily upset, had all those symptoms, and if you ask them if they had PTSD, no, I don't have it. You want to find out if they have it? Ask the people around them; they'll tell you. Oh yeah. So my trip to healing started in 2010 when I linked up with the veterans the guys that I served with in Vietnam. They were having a reunion for the platoon in Gulfport, Mississippi, at our platoon sergeant's house. I rode down there on a motorcycle and I hung out with those guys. And I can tell you, just being with them, the unspoken acceptance and the understanding, the exact understanding of what we all went through, it was like oh man, that was wonderful. And, as I understand it, all veterans are that way. They seek out the company of other veterans. And again, there's some pretty good reasons for that. And I'm going to get to those in a minute also. So the next thing for me was there was a neurofeedback protocol developed by a company called Saraset, used to be called Brain State Technologies, and it works on detecting your brain waves and playing them back to you in the form of musical notes. And the cool thing about this is, you to go through this, it works when you're sleeping. You don't even need to be awake for it to work. And not only does it work when you're sleeping, it works better. So if you go to sleep, you're on the job. So that helped. The next thing that helped is, anybody here know what a stellate ganglion block is, or an SGB block? Basically what they do, it's a protocol where they shoot like the Big Brother lidocaine into the side of your neck. Takes about 10 minutes. It's painless. And what that does is the numbing agent takes the nerves that it's close to, and the front of your brain, the amygdala, which controls emotions, fight or flight, all that sort of thing, that takes and it shuts down, like unplugging a computer. And when the numbing agent wears off and it reconnects, it reboots. And it goes back to getting out of the fight or flight state, and in most cases works 85 to 90% of the time, and it goes back to how you should be. So at least you get to experience how you were before the war. And that thing was, that was pretty good. I've had it done 4 times, lasts at least 6 months. Sometimes it lasts longer than that. And so I've had it done 4 times, because when it wears off, just get it done again. But the thing that worked the best was psychedelic treatment, therapy. And I had 2 people treat me with psychedelics. And after the psychedelics, I was a different guy. I mean, I was a totally different guy. There's a book called How to Change Your Mind by an author named Michael Pollan. And it's been out about 3-4 years. It is really a wonderful book. I went through it like a bag of peanuts. And that set me on the track of trying to get healed with psychedelics. I mean, it was incredible. So I have to tell you, and I'm pleased to tell you, that at that time, it had been 50 years for me since the war, and I finally came home. But now, it's time to bring our brothers and sisters home. And that's what I have taken to be my number one quest now. As I move through the years, I want to see us make great progress there, and I'm going to do what I can to tell my story and to help. But in order to do that, we first have to understand. We have to understand how PTSD that veterans have is different than PTSD that civilians have from trauma. You know, the muggings, murders, you know, and all the terrible, stressful things that can happen to an individual. Well, the veterans PTSD, unlike the civilian will look at whatever caused their trauma to be 100% negative. Veterans don't feel that way. You know, they will describe their combat experience as the best of times and the worst of times. They will, unlike a civilian sufferer who says they long to be the person they were before whatever event caused the civilian trauma. Veteran doesn't feel that way. Veteran is proud of their service. And they would never want to be the way before they acquired those skills, because they believe that made them the person they are today. The veteran often would say, I will go back and I would do it immediately. Civilian trauma sufferer never says that. And the other thing is with veterans, you know, we, as to do our job, war's grisly, make no mistake about that. We did things that we had to do, but that no one should ever have to do. We've seen things and we experienced things no one should ever have to experience. And as a result of that, we have memories no one should ever have to have. And because of that, and add the fact that in many cases, we were both not only the victims, but we were the perpetrators. And us doing that creates a moral dilemma. And it's a moral dilemma that is difficult for a veteran to verbalize and explain, particularly to someone who has no frame of reference there. So that is one of the things that gets in the way with treating veterans. And there's another reason that the veteran won't speak up is because the one thing that makes, you know, Sebastian Unger, a brilliant writer, has got a TED Talk that he did, little video, look it up, Why Men Miss War. And I stumbled across this and it made so much sense. The number one reason why we would all go back and why I tried and why others that I know went back or tried is that it's our brotherhood. It's the brotherhood that we had with us. The bond is as thick as you can imagine. You know, the thing that bothered me the most when I got wounded was I left those guys. And you know, I was watching his what he had to say, and I didn't know any of this, but I experienced. He said many times veterans will get wounded, and right after they're wounded, they go AWOL. Maybe go through a window, over a fence, or whatever, and they look for them. You know what they find? They find they made their way back through the lines to be with their rifle company. Well, civilians never do anything like that, but we do. And to me, you know, I was interviewed not too long ago, and they asked me, they say, well, why don't you go back to, why after, you were close to getting out, then you re-enlist and go back? And I said, because I wouldn't be with the same guys. They all rotated. I wanted to be with them. And so that's the other significant difference. So how do we help our veterans? The way we help them is, the first thing is maybe one day we can get psychedelics made legal for therapy. I'm thinking that the FDA is going to approve it by 2023. And, I live in Arizona, and I don't know if you guys know this here, but, sometimes people in other states kind of knock California. Now, I think you know. All right. But the one thing California has on the ball is it's got a bill in front of the legislature to make all psychedelics legal for therapy. Now, I don't know if you know this or not, but before LSD became a Schedule I drug, it was the main treatment for alcoholism, and it was one that actually worked. Now, why don't we have that now? Psychedelics is the important thing to know about psychedelics. Taking them on your own is not the answer. Taking them with guided therapy is definitely the answer. And what that does is the psychedelics open your mind and make it receptive, and the therapy does the healing. I see a psychiatrist once a week. Yes, I do. And her name is Dr. Jane Kaplan. And right now, the only psychedelic that is available for legal for therapy is ketamine. And I'm going to tell you, makes a difference. Makes a difference. And even though she doesn't have a frame of reference of what I went through with the psychedelic, that's okay with me. I'm happy to tell her as best as I can. Now, in order to really get this done, we have got to reach out to all the veterans that we know that we think may have PTSD. And we got to get them to step up, and we got to get them to ask for help. But that's for a veteran. I mean, we're a proud bunch. That is something that is very difficult to do. In order to do our jobs way back when, we had to be brave. And make no mistake about it, it's hard to be brave. I mean, because there's usually a pretty significant consequence. But yet, we did it nevertheless. And all our brothers and sisters that suffer from PTSD, they did too. So what we need to do, and what I ask them is, please be brave one more time. Let's step up. Let's ask for help. You start by dialing the Semper Fi PTSD hotline. It's on their website, thefund.org, right? And they can start their road to recovery. And everything I can do to push them, that's what I'm doing. And if they don't think they have PTSD, I tell them, just ask the people around you. They'll tell you. And my squad leader, the guy that had only been there 6 weeks, Barry George, I was talking to him. I said, Barry, how's your PTSD? He goes, I don't have it. And I talked to his wife, and he goes, man, does he have it. So there you go. So anyhow, that's it. There's a cure on the horizon. It's psychedelics in the interim, stellate ganglion blocks, Cereset, ketamine, a number of things which will make a difference. We got to get it done. So thank you. Happy Veterans Day. Semper Fi. And a really special, heartfelt message from all of us who served during the Vietnam War. Welcome home. Thank you.
musicians are still going to play? It's in the program? Hold on. The program's not over. We still have performances.
Thank you so much, Bob. Just terrific. Thank you.